New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Why, hello there. It's me, Bonnie. Yes, me, Bonnie Gonzalez, your doula for grief. How are you? How are you? Happy New Year. Welcome back. I've been away for a minute, but now back and ready to proceed in 2024, which I hear from all accounts and purposes out there that this is the year. This is the year for all of us to really continue to shine and move ourselves forward. And so with that said, a little bit about me. Okay. I am Bonnie Gonzalez, as I said. I am a grief coach. I'm a registered nurse. I'm a religious science practitioner and a licensed soul collage facilitator. And most importantly of all, I am a human being right here on the planet with you in these wonderful, auspicious times of and time of great change. And knowing that each one of us has a role to play in this change. So thank you for joining me today. If this is your first time, I just want to say welcome and to know that you have come to the right place to be on that path of recovering from grief, or that journey of recovering from grief, or navigating the pathway of grief. So know that you've come to the right place. And if you're a returning guest, oh, I'm so honored. I'm glad that we have this relationship, that you want to come back to hear more on the beautiful subject of grief. And I do want to just, for anyone that has not watched, or if you have watched, just want to remind you of what grief is. And grief is caused by loss. And loss can be any expected or unexpected event that changes your life in a way that you can't go back to the way it was before. And of course, death is the big mother of all. I say that is the biggest loss that we will encounter as humans on this planet. The loss of a loved one, the death of a loved one. But we do have other losses that affect us so profoundly. How about divorce? How about loss of friendship, relationships? What about a surgery that can leave your body in somewhat of a mutilated state or just different? How about a loss of identity with retirement, with moving, geographical moves that can put us into that state of loss of our familiar losses to what we are so accustomed to doing and having in our daily lives. And so with that loss, that's what puts us into grief. And grief are those emotions, of sadness, confusion, numbness, not knowing what to do, that sense of just being confused. And also joy. There's sometimes joy that comes with that, the sense of relief. So all of those emotions that come up are triggered by loss, and that's what we term as grief, that emotional state of sadness that comes with our loss. And so knowing that, my whole purpose of being here today and every day that I'm on, or just in my everyday state of being, is to bring grief out of the shadows of our lives and bring it right smack into the middle of our lives. Let's talk about it. If we talk about it, it makes it less scary, it demystifies it. There are some cultures that do really hold grief in a high reverence, but we're talking about our culture, and we're not putting our own culture down. It's just that, oh, I love what Maya Angelou says, that when we know better, we do better. So I think we're at that point of knowing that keeping grief in the back room or hiding from it or running away from it is not serving us. It doesn't serve our lives. Grief has a magical component to it. And that magical component of grief is healing. Yes, healing. The very thing that we want, but it is the very thing that we run from. So leaning into our grief is what brings about the healing of our grief. And I love what Bell Hooks says, that we cannot grieve in isolation. We are social creatures, and we do need to share our grief. I say that grief needs to be heard, grief needs to be shared, and grief needs to be validated. So I know that being able to talk about our grief is moving us steps, oh, a giant leap forward in healing. So with that said, today, the theme, since we're starting a new year, I thought the theme of our show today is grief as a new beginning. And I say that because grief can be that grief not can be, grief is a new beginning. When things like that happen, just as I said about the loss, it's when something unexpected or expected happens and your life can't go back to the way it was before. And that's why grief is that new beginning, because you are starting anew. And so, with that, I have a beautiful guest that I'm going to bring on in just a minute. And I just wanted to say this in saying Happy New Year, that if you're in the midst of grief or it has been lingering for a while, you might be feeling like, well, what is there to be happy about? And I hear you. Yes, grief can be, or grief is heavy and laced with sadness and emotions that can pull you down and just snap the joy or sap the joy right out of your life. Grief gets your attention like nothing else can. So, with that said, I want to stop there and bring my guest on so that she can chime into this grief as a new beginning. And my special guest today is Marilyn Marco, and she's a licensed marriage family therapist and has agreed to be with us today to share her insights on grief, grieving, and new beginnings. So please help me welcome to the show Marilyn Marco. Marilyn, how are you? Thank you
Hello.
so very much for your yes and for your enthusiasm about being here.
Thank you
Um,
for inviting me.
yes, Marilyn. Why don't we just take a minute right now and have you share with our audience exactly what you're doing here on this beautiful planet to help us all move forward.
Oh, okay. Well, I have been in the mental health field in California in the San Francisco Bay Area for over 40 years. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, trained as a family therapist, used to work with families and children a lot, and now I work with individual adults and a lot of couples. So I do a lot of
Mm, yeah.
therapy. And I have had many other jobs in the field. So I've have a lot of experience, but I am retired from my other agency jobs and
Mhm.
have had my private practice for over 23 years, but actually
Wow.
in the entire field of mental health over 40 years. And I'm still doing my private practice because I love doing it. I
Mm.
love contributing to people and making a difference with them. And I get wonderful people that I get to work with. And so that's a real plus. And I am also writing a book, my first book called, the name of it is Alzheimer's, Opening the
Oh,
Closed Heart. And this
oh,
has to do with my experience with my mother with her Alzheimer's disease, but it's written from a spiritual and metaphysical point of view, not scientific.
mhm. Right.
Um, so I'm just in the middle of that. And so I'm excited about that and also terrified at the same time.
That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah, but
What is that? You feel the fear and do it anyway.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um,
Correct.
and so as far as grief, I I was married in my late 30s, and the man that I fell in love with said, "Well, I'm building a boat and going cruising if you want to be with me, a sailboat."
Wow. Mhm.
And I had only sailed on San Francisco Bay, and
Oh,
I said yes.
oh,
Well,
good for you.
because I mean, I was in love with him. What else was I gonna
Yeah.
do, you know? And I'm an adventurer and a risk taker, and so I thought, well, why not? This sounds interesting. Get me out of the rat race. I was deep in the middle of a career and what I thought was my pinnacle job. But so he built this sailboat himself, and so we
Mm.
sailed out the Golden Gate and turned left, as we call
Yeah.
it. So
Left, I guess that's going south, is that right?
that's right, yeah, down to Mexico, yeah.
Right.
So basically, we were gone for 6 years. We were in the South Pacific, and we lived in
Wow.
Hawaii. Lived on the boat and worked over there. And then we sailed back in 1994 because my mother had Alzheimer's disease, which took me a while to figure that out.
Mhm.
And I basically needed to come back and take care of my parents.
Mm.
They were in an emergency situation. And so I told my
Right.
husband, I have to go back. This is what I have to do. And at that point, our marriage was in crisis.
Ooh.
And he didn't wanna come back, and I said, "Well, I'm going back, so if you wanna come, it's fine.
Mhm.
I have to
Mhm.
do this."
Right.
So, we did sail back, and then, basically, I did love the cruising lifestyle as well, and for
Mm.
10 years, he waited for me to be ready to go again, and I wrestled with it for 10 years. Do I go? Do I stay? Because I loved it too. Finally, I said, "No, you need to go because that's your passion and your lifeblood. I need to stay because
Mm.
there are things I need to do." So what I
Right.
needed to do that I didn't know at the time was do my spiritual work and my
Mhm.
spiritual healing, as well as further develop my professional career as
Mm.
a therapist. So we actually divorced in 2005 so that it was clean with the understanding you can have other relationships if you want. He got
Mm.
a crew and went back out cruising, went back to the South Pacific.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and I proceeded with my life. So, um, but we have always had a connection. We stayed in contact all those years, not closely, and we did have
Mhm.
some short-term relationships in between. But
Right. Right.
so, long story short, he had a stroke almost 7 years ago. And
Wow.
he had the stroke on the boat in Fiji. He's been living
Oh,
on his boat in Fiji for 12 years,
wow.
and but has gone back and forth between here and there, and we've always connected and he's stayed with me when he's been back here. But,
Yes.
we have such a deep connection and this, love for each other that I couldn't let him there's no medical care in Fiji. It's a poor third world country. And
Yes.
so it took me 3 weeks to get him back here to California
Right.
for treatment and care. And so, ultimately, yeah, he was in the hospital for 3 weeks and then came home and I took care of him for a year. And then I said, "You got to leave. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be a full-time caregiver." So he
Yeah.
went to stay with his grandkids and then came back. But that connection has always been there.
Mhm.
But where the grief comes into this for me is that when we got together, I had said to him, "I will go cruising with you if you have children with me." And,
Oh,
and,
okay.
and he said, "Yes," but we didn't talk about the details of this.
I didn't talk about
And
how it was gonna happen, is that
yeah,
it?
or exactly when. But we had sailed up to Hawaii and we're living there and working there. And that's when I wanted to start, a family. And anyway, it didn't work out. So, um, I was left with this deep, deep grief at the time, which I was in a deep depression, actually.
Mm.
That was the first time that I had really faced that, didn't look like I was going to have children in my life.
That's yes, I was just gonna ask that. It
Yeah,
sounds like
so
that's a
that was
lot.
a huge loss. It sent me into the depths of depression that I have never experienced before or since. But I
Mhm.
pulled myself up out of that because I heard this voice. You can either become a bitter, you know, old woman, or you can pull yourself out of this and live your life with passion and purpose and love.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so I pulled myself out of it because I knew I had to. Anyway, when he was gone, we divorced so that it was clean, as I said, and I started doing my healing work.
Mhm.
And then through the years, did that in various ways. And then more recently, just, as I approach, older age, um, I really started wrestling with these issues of grief in my life that I realized I had never deeply gone into.
Oh, yeah.
That there was a level of fear of going into that. But
Mhm.
um, things started shifting in my life recently, and I was totally guided to go down deep into the depths of the grief in a way that I never had before. And what I was really grieving was the loss of my own dreams,
Mm.
the loss of
Mhm.
the loss of family that I thought I would have, children that I thought I would have.
Mhm.
And I allowed myself to go down into that grief to experience it in a way I'd never had before, but with the intention of coming out on the other side of it renewed and more in touch with who I am and my purpose in life. And so interestingly enough, when Bonnie and I met up recently, I
Yeah.
was in the middle of that grieving.
Mhm.
And um, it, I don't know, it lasted about a week or so. I don't know how long. And then um, it, I talked to my ex-husband, my partner, I call him, on the phone.
Yeah.
And also, just one little backup piece. He had been here this past summer for 5 months taking care of me because I had shoulder surgery, and he wanted to contribute to me because I had done so much caretaking of
Wow.
him.
Mhm.
So it was a nice way for him to be able to do that. And then when he went back at the end of October, back to Fiji, back to living on the boat, and he's had a very sweet life over there. It's a
Yeah,
beautiful culture and beautiful people.
I
Um,
believe.
but I felt the loss of that separation in a way I had not before. And he's
Mm.
gone back and forth several times. And I just said to myself, I can't do this anymore. I cannot keep doing this yo-yo, bouncing back and forth
Mm.
and having to let go each time. It's too hard. I can't do this.
Okay.
And then around about the same time, I had a conversation with him on the phone, and all of a sudden, his life is shifting over there. His closest friends, a couple who had been there for many years, sailed away. And I
Mm.
didn't realize that was really impacting him deeply. And then the second thing he shared was that the marina where he has kept his boat for 12 years might be closing. And there's no place else in Fiji that he can or would want to take his boat, keep his boat. So it's like, well, what now? Is well, I could sail up to Hawaii or Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't take that away from him because of the ongoing stroke symptoms. He's not able to sail anymore, but I don't take that away from him. So I just said to him, well, in order to make that boat seaworthy, you would have to invest thousands of dollars to make it seaworthy again. And you don't have that kind of money. And he says, that's true. And then he said to me something he has said a few times in past years, and I've always accepted it as that's your choice. I totally respect if that's how you want to end your life. That's up to you. I always thought he wanted to end his life and live out his life in Fiji. But he said,
Right.
well, well, otherwise I could just take the boat out to sea and go out with the boat, and that's it. And this is what
Mm.
sailors do when they don't have any other options. They sail their boat out to sea, and that's the end.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty drastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just heard all of that, like, I didn't give any response. It's just, I heard it. It's like, okay. So the next day, I called my friend Barbara and I asked her to call me to support me in having a conversation of in what I thought was going to be, Barbara, please support me, and just letting go of Jim. I just need to let go of him. And
Yeah.
instead, what I got was, so Barbara's a very close friend, very intuitive, knows Jim and me both very well, loves Jim to bits. And she reflected back to me and said, Marilyn, you have the greatest gift right under your nose. He
Mm,
loves you so deeply. And when
right.
you're around him, you shine.
Mm. That is a beautiful friend to see that and to say that.
And I know that's true because I can feel it when I'm here and I get that response, that reflection back to me from friends. And when she said that, instantly, and I have to tell you, this was all totally divinely guided. In one instant, I shifted 180 degrees and
Mm,
instantly let go of all my resistance, all my resentment, all
mhm.
my everything. And I just saw, in fact, the gift that I have, that we deeply love each other, always have. And yes, through the years, I've wanted another relationship, looked for another relationship, but never done anything about it, you know?
You wanted it, but didn't want to take
Yeah,
action. Is that
yeah,
it?
yeah. And of course, it never showed up because there wasn't any space for it because of this deep love with Jim and I. And I was just crying and crying while she and I were talking, and I just totally got it. I let everything go in an instant.
Mm,
And
yes.
so I called him after this conversation and I said, I have something important to say to you. I want you facing me full face. So he says, okay, well, let me get out of bed. So he got out of bed and sat on the settee facing me full on. And I said, I want you to come over here and live with me. And
Wow.
he said, yes, that's what I want to.
Mm. No hesitation, anything,
No,
nothing.
no, I
Wow.
didn't really know that's what he had been wanting deeply. I thought he wanted to live out his life in Fiji, but this is what he wants too. And I'm not doing this because his life is shifting over there. His life is shifting over there just because the universe is lining up to support both of us. And so he has to sell the boat over there before he can come back. And that'll take maybe a few months or whatever.
Right,
But
right.
that's what's happening. And it feels so right and so on
Mm,
purpose and does feel like this incredible gift. And
wow.
as I have been sharing this with friends all over, we have a lot of friends. People are thrilled. They're thrilled. They just get it, and they're so happy for us. And a
Mm,
lot of people have said to me, Yeah, I knew this would happen. I've just been waiting for this. It's like, what? Everybody else knew before me.
Oh
I
my gosh.
was the last one to find out.
And Marilyn, myself being a grief coach, I always says that, that there are gifts of grief. There are gifts of grief, and it sounds to me, Marilyn, and you can speak more to that if you like, but it sounds like from this grief that you really had to drop into that grief
I
to be
did.
able to. I'll let you go ahead. Okay, yes.
Yeah, but I didn't do that with any particular purpose, and certainly not for the purpose of relationship. I was simply going into that because I knew somehow I was just guided that I had to go down deep into that
Mm-hmm.
grief and really let go of it because I had been hanging on to the resentment of not having achieved my dreams. You know, my pictures of how my life was going to turn out. And I knew that I needed to let go of that was in the way. So
Mm-hmm.
it was really not with any other purpose of, I'm doing this for the purpose of creating a relationship. No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm doing this for me, for myself, for my soul, for my heart.
And
And
yeah,
yeah,
allowing yourself to feel what came up. You
yeah,
just allowed yourself to feel what came up without having an agenda
yeah,
to say, oh, well, if I
yeah.
grieve, I'll get X, Y, and Z. I'll have my
No,
dream.
no, 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 no.
Just allowed yourself
Yeah. And
to.
I spent several days just crying every day,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, and
And
just
I
allowing it
was
to come up.
I was going to ask you, Marilyn, what I know you said that you've had issues before. You've had issues that you could have grieved, but maybe didn't allow. Yes, that's what you're saying. You didn't allow yourself to go there, or that things came up that you realized you really had not grieved the extent of those losses.
Mhm.
What do you feel was there something different this time that said just gonna feel it? What was going on within Marilyn? Do you feel that allowed her to really be be in her grief unapologetically? It sounds like just to be in that grief
Yeah.
without any type of agenda.
Again, I have to say, this whole thing has been totally divinely guided. This is not something I decided from my head. This is
Mhm.
not something I decided as a therapist. Oh, well, then this is what I need to do next.
Yes.
It was not even from my heart. It
Mm,
was totally divinely guided and
mhm,
orchestrated. And I work very intuitively with myself and with all of my clients. And
mhm,
I knew it was time to go deeply down into that grief in a way I had not before.
mhm,
I don't think I had truly allowed myself to grieve in that way and to let go of those dreams. The other part was I realized while I was in the grief, it's like, okay, I've had all this resentment towards Jim, blaming him for me
yeah,
not having the family I wanted. And in fact, what I saw was no, I had, as every relationship does, it's always a 50-50. Each partner is playing a part in
yeah,
this. It's not one partner is 100% responsible and the other partner is the victim at the effect of this. No, you're an
mhm,
equal partner. And I realized that I was an equal partner in
wow,
not having my dreams, that I had made choices for myself
mm,
that had prevented that dream from coming true.
mhm,
That there was even a part of me that was scared to have children. I've always been an
mm,
adventurer and a risk taker, and I love traveling, and I've loved my freedom, and freedom has probably been my touchstone word all of my life. I love having my freedom. Well, you
ah, okay.
kind of
Ooh,
lose
children,
some of
yeah,
that when you have children. It's like, I love children, but I don't know if I
uh,
so I really this time took responsibility for no, I made decisions in my
mm,
life that created my life this way. it's not all on Jim. It's not because he was reluctant to have children, and I can't hold him responsible anymore. And I certainly cannot hang on to the resentment of him for that. And I cannot hold on to the resentment of him for his stroke, because I had a lot of resentment about the stroke. And
Oh, I
and,
see.
and I had a lot of resentment about being a caregiver. I don't want to be a caregiver. No, I don't want to be a full-time caregiver. But in fact, I saw in this whole process that I'm describing, that's part of my contract. That was part of why I came here. It was all meant to be. Again, it was divinely orchestrated and meant to be. The truth is, I'm an excellent caregiver. It's not my first choice of what I want to do in life, but I just happen to be very good at it.
Right,
I
being
used
a therapist is a part of that calling
Yeah,
as well.
exactly. I used to say caregiving is not good to me. But
Yeah.
anyway, this time I saw it in a completely different light. Again, that divinely guided light of, no, this is where I chose to be and I'm supposed to be.
Wow. Well, Marilyn, I was just going to say, I hear so much in your story that we could share, or that I could ask so many questions about. The one that's kind of burning right now in this moment is that you said something about truly taking responsibility too for your life, taking responsibility for those actions and decisions. And
Mhm.
what is that? When we take responsibility, then we can no longer be the victim,
That's
because
right.
we have taken
That's right.
responsibility
That's
for
right.
our part
Yes.
in events that did unfold. And
Hmm.
so, with saying that can be a mm, you can see taking responsibility as offering what you said, freedom, that you wanted freedom in your life.
Yes.
And being able to take responsibility, it sounds like it's giving you that freedom that you so desire to make the decisions that
Yeah, I feel like,
for.
oh my God, this giant weight has been lifted off of me. And
Mm,
I feel, I truly do feel it's like a new beginning,
yes,
because his coming over here it's not even a continuation of where we left off. It's a whole new chapter.
yes.
And even though he has special needs, from disabilities from the stroke, mm, they there are all kinds of possibilities. I don't know what they are, but we're just so comfortable being with each other. That's the thing.
Mm,
We just have this long history and this deep connection and many, many friends.
yes.
Um, but most importantly, that deep connection with each other, that people long for, but I
Hmm.
guess not
Yeah.
not everyone experiences. And I feel very blessed to have that in my life. And so
Mm,
it feels truly like a whole new chapter.
ex-
Um,
exactly. That
like,
new beginning, as
yeah,
we said, a new
it does.
beginning.
Yeah.
And with that, uh, Marilyn, because you're saying that this time it's different when he comes. Before he came to help take care of you. Before that, it was to help take care of him.
Mhm.
And now it's because, quote unquote, it sounds like you have realized by going through what you've gone through, if you want to call it dark night of the soul, through your grief, that has come out to show you what it is that you do want. And
Mhm.
gosh, what a miracle is that you can really have that right there, that you've had it right there all
Mhm.
along.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just want to ask you a couple questions.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think if we should have a little break before I ask you. No, maybe we'll just continue. We'll just go straight through.
Yeah.
It sounds like Jim has been a part of your life for how long? It's lots of years now.
Oh, yeah, it is. What is it? Oh, we got married in 87, so
Yeah. So
that's over 30 years.
yeah,
Um,
30. Why did I want? Yeah, close. Yeah,
37 years.
Yeah, I was going to say close to 40. For some reason, my mind was spinning around with 40, but pretty much close to it. And so there were a lot of life's events that happened during those years.
Oh, yeah.
And the one that I wanted to go back to, and not to confuse or cross pollinate, you talked about writing the book about your mom with Alzheimer's. And
Mhm.
Alzheimer's, that's, I mean, there's that loss before the actual death. That
Oh, that
there's
is years of grieving. It's constant
Mhm.
grieving,
It's
grieving, grieving, grieving. Yeah.
losing what was.
Yeah.
Um, and so, do you feel that when you grieve this time, that was still a part of that? That came
No,
out of play
that
this
didn't
time?
that didn't come up this time
Mhm. When you
because
were reviewing
actually
it.
a lot of healing took place in the spiritually guided experiences I had,
Mhm.
um, both here and when I traveled in Cuba,
I
because my mother was born in Cuba, so I have
That's
I always wanted to go there to her birthplace, and um, I won't go into the whole story because it's a long one, but the brief backstory is my mother's she and her sister, 1 year older, were both born in Cuba because their mother had gotten a job at Abbott Laboratories as an interpreter. She would have
Mhm.
gotten that job because her father was this brilliant man connected, who was very well connected to the founder of Abbott Laboratories. That's how she would have
Oh,
landed that
wow.
job.
Mhm.
So she was working in Cuba at the time and met her American husband there in
Mhm.
Cuba. He
Mhm.
was an American cowboy, and he came there as part of Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders during the
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Okay.
And
Wow.
so they met, and the sparks flew, and all of that. And but so when they had to leave Cuba because of the political situation there, and I think my mother was just a few months old when they came back to the U.S. And
Right.
and then her brother was born in the US, so their third child. But then after that, I don't know the timeline, sometime after that, they divorced and their mother went back to Philadelphia where she had been living before. But
Mm.
ultimately, she abandoned her children. So my mother and her brother and sister were abandoned, literally put out on the streets of
Mm.
Philadelphia with a name tag saying where their nearest kin was.
Mm, wow.
And I couldn't
Heartbreaking.
grasp that as a child.
Yes,
No one
exactly.
can grasp that. But anyway, ultimately they were sent to, they were first sent to their father in Idaho, and he realized he couldn't take care of 3 little kids. And so
Mhm.
he asked his sister and his mother, who lived on the ranch in Wyoming, would they take them and raise them? So they did. So that's where they were raised, there in
Mhm.
Wyoming. So my and also my mother's mother was Jewish, so there's the Jewish connection also.
Wow.
And my mother erased her mother from her consciousness. My mother
Mhm.
would answer basic questions about her background, but even as a child, I knew not to push too far.
Yes.
And so she had erased this woman from her consciousness. So I never knew anything about her. I never had a relationship with her at all.
Mm.
Nothing.
Yes.
Nothing, and other than the few little snippets that my mother told me growing up. And it was not until a lot of what's contained in my book also are um, downloaded conversations from my grandmother and my mother from the other side.
Wow.
So when I was first doing my healing work after my divorce in 2005, all of a sudden, this grandmother, whom I never had a relationship with, she
Right. Didn't know
came to
anything
me.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, in my meditation and in my healing work that I was doing, she came to me very powerfully and very clearly. I knew that was her, very
Wow.
powerful, very clearly. And she said to me, "My giving away your mother and her siblings was an act of love because I
Mm.
did not have the love in my heart to give to them that I knew they needed. And I did not get that love from my mother, and she did not get that from her mother. And that goes back for generations. And
Wow.
then she paused and said to me, and this must stop with you. You must open your heart.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
So that was the beginning of my relationship with this woman, Frida, my grandmother. And then when I went to Cuba the first time in 2018, again, she came to me, and I had thought of writing this book for a long time. And she came to me when I was alone at my casa one afternoon and she said, go get your book and start writing. And she says, yes, you are to write this book. I will be guiding you. Yes, your mother wants you to write this book, and she will be guiding you. And then she proceeded to give me downloads, which I was writing and crying and writing, crying. So for about 6 weeks, I was getting these downloads from her almost every morning. So I established this relationship with her. And then the following year, I went back to Cuba again. Only this time, I started that trip by going to the city where my mother was born. And I had a copy of my grandparents' marriage certificate that I'd gotten from my cousin. And that's how I was able to locate the church in Camagüey, Cuba, where they were married. And so my two friends who were with me are also very sensitive to energies like me. And so we went into the church. It's like the place was packed. All the ancestors was there. Their ancestors, my ancestors, everybody was there. It was
waiting to greet you.
Yeah. So again, that grandmother was very present with me throughout that whole trip.
Great.
And when we left and flew from Havana back to Miami, I went into this meditation immediately and said, thank you. And this grandmother immediately came to me and said, no, thank you. Thank you for coming here and experiencing the love that I experienced when I lived here. That love has now rippled back through the generations and healed the generations and come back down to your own family of origin.
Beautiful. Wow, Marilyn. Well, I can't wait for what's the title of the book, and then we'll try to get back. And so mesmerized by that, by this beautiful story that's unfolding as a book.
It's called Alzheimer's: Opening the Closed Heart.
Opening the Closed Heart. Oh, wow.
It's based on a theory that I have, that there is another contributing factor to Alzheimer's that has not been addressed, which is the closed emotional heart.
Okay, say that again. With Alzheimer's,
there is another contributing factor to Alzheimer's that has not been addressed. The closed emotional heart.
I see. Wow, Marilyn, I can't wait. You'll have to come back when that is out, and we'll have to talk it up and chat it up. And I know, believe it or not, our time is drawing near, but I wanted to say a couple things or ask you your opinion about grief actually transforming us and shaping us. You want to speak to that a little, or renewing us in a sense? Going through the grieving process.
It is a gift, and it is also something that I have clients where I work with them on their grief.
Yes,
and it is definitely an important part of the healing process. And in our culture, we tend to be very afraid of it and want to push it away and not get near it. But the truth is, it's very important to go into that grief and allow ourselves to experience the depth of it, knowing that you will come back up out of that renewed and a different person. That the grieving itself is a healing process, and is important to allow in whatever form that takes. It takes different forms for different people. It might be, curling up on a ball in the fetal position on your bed and crying for days and days. It might be, just being by yourself for extended periods of time.
Yes. walking in nature, just being outdoors, and maybe just
Absolutely.
sky
Yeah.
gazing can
Yes. Very,
really.
very important to be in nature and connect with nature during that.
Mhm, mhm.
Uh, and to connect with any kind of creative process that comes up during that. But it's different for each person, but important to allow ourselves to go down into it, knowing that that is part of the healing path.
Mhm, mhm. And,
Right.
and since you did talk about you do have a really, profound practice of, working with, clients, and knowing that, how do you feel? I say people like yourself, myself, spiritual, counselors, guidance, are really spiritual first responders for people
Oh, I like that.
in grief. Yes, spiritual first
I
responders.
like that a lot.
Yes. How do you feel that you keep yourself prepared to do your job in a beautiful and effective way that you do? What do you do for Marilyn so that she's there for those that are in need
I
of
do a
her?
lot of self-care. I do all the things that are pleasurable to me. I like to be out in nature a lot, go hiking, be out in the fresh air, walk, exercise, eat healthy, and probably extremely important to be with people who love me and care about me.
Mhm.
Um, friends, people who are very special to me.
Yeah.
Um, that's very, very important. And in my work as a therapist, you can't do therapy unless you have very clear boundaries with people. You have to be able to let it go. I cannot take
Mhm.
on people's pain. I have to let it go at the end of the day and know that that's theirs. That's not mine. I do not have to take it on. So I do a lot of prayer. I do a lot of breathing. I even do a little bit of qigong occasionally. I do some yoga
Mhm.
um, to move the energy out of my body,
I love
and
it.
and
Yes.
and a lot of prayer and asking for guidance and angels, please clear my field, because I believe that we have angels and guides around us all the time, and I can clear my own field, but I also like to ask for angels, please clear my field of any negative space, any
Mhm.
negative energies. um,
Right.
and Oh, sage myself. I use crystals, just all
Mm.
kinds of things. But I would say the most important piece is separating myself from my clients, knowing that
Right.
my job is to support them and be compassionate and be there for them. But in the end, it's their stuff, their issue.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
Yes.
I
Yes.
cannot take it on. You can't do effective therapy if you can't
Mhm.
maintain that boundary.
Yeah. Thank you, Meryl. And do you agree that there is a resilience that's born from grief?
Absolutely.
Resilience, and I think that's the piece that people maybe not always understand or grasp, but we have this human resilience
Yes.
to come back from whatever our event is, the situation, and come back to not like, oh, I'm back to normal, but I like to say, you're better now. You've experienced
Absolutely.
that. You've moved through that. You've
Yeah.
experienced something really profound and you've moved through it. You've come
Yeah.
back. You don't want to go back to what was
No.
normal
No,
before.
no, 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 no. You're a new person now.
Exactly
Yeah.
embracing what is now. So
Mhm.
yeah, I feel that that's something I'd like for people to take away from today, to know that we have that
Oh, I
resilience.
think that is so important because we as human beings often don't know, or we forget that we are incredibly powerful beings. We have
Thank
incredible power within us to change circumstances,
Yes.
create life the way we want. We have
Mm,
so much power that we don't even realize. And this
yeah.
is one of them, that yes, we are in fact strong and resilient. And you can tap into that. And even if you don't think you have it, it is in there.
Yes.
for you to discover if you've not discovered it in the past. I'm truly amazed all the time at the stories I read and hear about people who have come out of horrible circumstances and
Yes. Right.
achieved phenomenal success and peace.
Mhm.
It's within all of us.
Yes. I thank you for affirming that, for
Yeah.
for sharing that, to say that that is, yeah, definitely a truth. Um, One thing that we had talked about too is that a lot of people are reluctant to really grieve, or afraid to go to that space of really deep grief.
Mhm.
And we had talked about that because of that feeling that it's an undercurrent and you'll be towed to the underworld, never to be seen or heard from again. And that is
Mhm.
just not true of
No.
grief. There's like that. It's like when I was learning to swim, as an adult, I had to learn to swim. So, and I remember standing, a part of this class was at the last day of class, you had to be able to jump into like the deep end of the pool, which I don't know, 10 feet or whatever. That was absolutely terrifying for someone who could not swim.
Yeah.
And I had this beautiful instructor that was there that, stood with me. He says, "No, we're going to stand here until you jump in. You're going to have to do it at some point." And I said, "Oh, but I'm afraid I'll drown." He said, "No." He says, "You will see how buoyant you are. You'll pop back up." And he says, "And if you don't pop back up, I'll come down and get you." And so I finally jumped in, and I was surprised how buoyant I was, just like he said, that I would pop back up, and I did.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and I think, I'd like to share that with if you're afraid of grieving, don't be. It's like being in that buoyant, pool or sea that you will pop back up. And
Yes.
if you're afraid of doing it alone, get help. Have that teacher like I had. Get a therapist.
Yes.
Get a group support. Something that you said when you were sharing your story about going through this, that you called a friend,
Mhm.
having a friend. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, just not doing grief alone,
No.
not doing it alone.
No.
And if you don't have that friend that you can call, then, as I said, reach out for, a therapist, group support, because
Mhm.
really, we're all human, and that is a true human trait of
Mhm.
wanting to
Mhm.
help and
Mhm.
just
Yes.
to help.
Yeah.
So, I've said that, and I'm gonna close this out here in a few minutes. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us? I know that, as we said, grief is a new beginning. You have a new opportunity that's presenting itself for 2024. Anything that
Mhm.
you'd like to share around that after having moved through this grief, this really dark period, and into this new beginning? Is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Just compassion and encouragement. You can do it. Whatever is in front of you, you can do it. You will amaze yourself with the hidden gems within yourself that you might not have ever discovered, that are just waiting to be dredged up and shown to the light. So give yourself that gift. You can do
Beautiful,
it.
beautiful.
There's and definitely, as Bonnie says, get support. There's lots of support out there. Yeah,
Yes,
you don't have to do it alone.
yes.
Yeah.
And I do want to add that Marilyn is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and so you can reach her if you want to reach out for help. She's here, she's available, and this is her email, MarilynGMarco at
I do
gmail.
also see people on Zoom.
Oh, virtual and via Zoom. A virtual is Zoom. Virtual and in person,
Or in person. Yeah.
or in person.
But
So
if you're not local, yeah, Zoom
yeah,
works.
Yes, Marilyn. Oh my goodness. Just thank you so much for your honesty and openness with, sharing what you've just recently. And this is really recent. It's not even like you can say
Yeah.
years ago I
No, no, this is like a couple of weeks ago.
did. Exactly. I didn't even realize that this was all in the process. And Marilyn and I
I
just had
didn't
a
either.
most beautiful, heartfelt conversation over a couple of hours. And I am just thrilled to have her here to share her story because it truly is encouraging
Thank
and
you
so
so
ties
much.
in with grief as a new beginning. And
Mhm.
so what I want to end on, it's making this new year about you, whatever you've been through, wherever you've gone, and whatever has come before now, even in the midst, as Marilyn said, of deep grief that leaves you, crying for days, knowing that there is a new beginning that's being crafted within and shaped, and you definitely are guided. And I say also, I'd like to offer this to just, if we can lean into trusting that our lives are unfolding just the way they are meant to, that we do have that spiritual guidance. And I think Marilyn alluded to, there's a lot of unemployed angels that we can call on to get employed, because, yeah, they're here to help. And we just, as I always say, just don't do grief alone. But in talking about this new year, now is the time to just ask yourself, what do I want? What would make me happy right now? Those are the kinds of things that grief gets our attention in that way. It's like, I'm not happy. So what would make me happy? I would like to have whatever comes up for you. And just listen and honor what comes up. Is there something different that you'd like to invite into your life this year? Is it new people, new projects? Do you want to try something new? You want to take a class or be like Marilyn, write a book, go skydiving, make a drum, sing in a choir, or a solo. I just say that the world is your oyster right now. So make yourself the pearl. Oh, that's kind of corny, but I like it. Okay. So, and then the other part of that, after you define what it is that you do want, ask who can support you? Who can support you? I love how Marilyn said she has a friend that she could just call on. So who can support you in this? Um, do you really feel like you could do it on your own? Even if you do, you know that there are people that would want to help. Are you one of those people that would like to have an accountability partner or just a buddy along for the ride? You choose your style and follow through. And as you move through the grief process, knowing, as I said to Marilyn, that you're being transformed, reshaped, and renewed. So embrace your resilience and honor your progress on this journey called grief. You have what it takes to make it. I think Marilyn shared that as well. You have what it takes. So you're navigating this path to wholeness. So, as I said, remember that grief's superpower is healing. And there's a Buddhist parable that I love. It's about the darker the night, the nearer the dawn.
Mm.
The colder the winter, the
Mhm.
nearer the spring. So I ask you to just know that this is this new year. It's a new beginning, and just take baby steps, please, and then congratulate yourself on moving forward this year. And don't forget to also love yourself during those times of what you feel is a perceived setback. To continue to love yourself. If you say, "Oh, but I haven't gotten there yet. I'm not over it yet." It's like, it's okay. Just love yourself. Just love yourself. And I'm just holding the high watch for everyone and just sending light and love to all of us, to all of you out there that's listening. And I say, if you're not in grief, that's That's wonderful, but I bet that you know someone who is in grief. So reach out to help someone that may be in grief. And if you're the one in grief, don't do it alone. So with that, I just say thank you. And here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to go to your mirror and I want you to look yourself in the eye and say, what do I need right now? What do I need?
Mhm.
Whatever comes up, honor it and love yourself. Thank you. Thank you. And I do have a YouTube channel. You can find all of the old past episodes, not old episodes, past episodes it's on YouTube under Your Doula for Grief. And I so love you and see you next time. And thank you for sharing this hour with Marilyn and I. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next time. Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Ciao. Looking forward to the book. Okay.
Thank you.
Having you back to
Thank you.
discuss that. Thank you.
Okay.
Ciao.
New Thought Radio, music from all your favorite New Thought artists. From Jamie Lula, Karen Drucker, Gary Lynn Floyd, Ricky Byers, Daniel Nahmod, Eddie Watkins Jr., and many, many more. 24/7 New Thought Radio. Positively inspiring.